Hello, I'm Eric Snodgrass, and thank you for watching today's in-depth ag forecast brought to you by Nutrien Ag Solutions. We'll look back over the last 72 hours at total accumulated precipitation, and your eye is immediately drawn to the heavy rains we've seen in the last 3 days from what was once, for just a few moments here, Hurricane Nicholas. It, of course, has been downgraded and is currently a tropical depression, but that doesn't take away from the fact that we have several areas in here that have seen between 6 and 12 inches of rainfall, with a few areas that have seen even more than that. And as Nicholas just continues to sit and spin in this area and move toward the north, toward like the border of Arkansas and Louisiana, will continue to get on its eastern side quite a bit more precipitation. You can also see where we had the front that moved through the eastern Corn Belt and also through parts of the Mid-South earlier this week on Tuesday, and then on Wednesday produced severe weather into the northeast. And we did have more heavy rainfall that did move through parts of the upper Midwest, and that's an area that I'm going to be targeting in my near-term forecast with some more precipitation, although there's been some significant changes there as of late. So let's go ahead and take a look here at our latest satellite imagery. We're going to kind of focus mainly on the tropics, as much of the United States today had really a cloud-free day, just a little bit left over in the northern plains of the United States. But in the south and southeast, we can see, just watch this again. I'll keep your focus right here for a moment. That would be the circulation of Nicholas. It's still sitting and spinning there. And again, all of the almost like rain band-like activity, the convective activity, is on the eastern side of it. We have another tropical system right here. The National Hurricane Center has given this a 70% chance of developing beyond just a tropical disturbance. And you can see its circulation bringing some cloud cover, but also some light precip into parts of the eastern Carolinas. So we're going to keep a close eye on that very carefully. Okay, quick update on the tropics. This is what we've got from the 2 p.m. update from the National Hurricane Center. So as you note here, 70% chance of development, but mostly the effect of this is going to be kept offshore. Tropical Depression Nicholas isn't really going to move anywhere from here for a while. I'll show you that in a few moments. And I'm going to keep my eye on this over the end of this week and weekend to see where this system we've watched move off of Africa, gosh, that was back over the weekend. We're going to see if it can continue to get organized and move just north of the Lesser Antilles, and if that ever becomes a system that may come into play for the East Coast. There's just too much uncertainty on the steering currents and the wind shear ahead of this, plus this big system that's coming through the United States that's got me asking a lot of question marks about this one. Okay, so right now, this is really what I want to dig into. Yesterday, this is the 12Z run from yesterday, looking at total precipitation through basically next Wednesday night. And at that particular point, a lot of our focus was on this deep wave that comes into the northwest and then generates this deep low that was going to be here and go straight through the Great Lakes. And it was going to drop a lot of moisture, and it was going to pull that all in this area, producing a rather large shield of precipitation that extended through this entire region. That meant a lot of rain for Wyoming, through the Dakotas, Minnesota, up into parts of southern Manitoba and this section of Ontario. And we're going to add a whole lot more moisture down here to where the eastern side of Nicholas was causing problems. Now, why I'm showing you this is because this was the old forecast, and this is what the latest 12Z run looks like for the same time. Now again, if I just go back and forth, old forecast, new forecast, what we want to discuss here is the shift. The wave is still coming into the Pacific Northwest, but the behavior of it beyond that has changed considerably. And where we once forecast quite a bit of rainfall, for example, in through this area, extending into this part of Manitoba, you can now see that that's all been shifted to parts of the upper Midwest and shifted farther into Ontario. We're now significantly wetter in this corridor. And you may think, well, it looks drier down here. Well, that's simply because we're not including the last 24 hours of precip, which was on the previous map in this. But that change was substantial, and I'd like to talk to you about why that change happened. So to do that, we're going to look at surface winds, all right? So currently, today, there's a low here and the associated front moving in this direction. We have that tropical disturbance we're keeping an eye on here, and you can still see the circulation of Nicholas. But all this action we're discussing and the change in the pattern is actually here. You notice we're still watching 1, 2, and then there's that typhoon I've talked about now for it feels like more than 10 days. These 3 pieces in the flow of the Pacific jet stream are going to be critical, and I want to show you what's critical about it. So why don't we step up to 500 millibars and look at those winds, all right? This is the trough I'm most concerned about. And the reason why is because it's very fast. There's nothing slowing down the momentum here in the North Pacific. And as it does come into the Pacific Northwest, it's going to be producing the first meaningful rainfall on the Cascades and Northern Rockies in a while. But it's what it does after that, as it gets over the mountains, that has been kind of up in the air, okay? Because the previous model runs, this was from yesterday's model runs, attempted to bring that wave onshore and then cut it off right here, meaning that the flow was going to go over the top of it like that and cut off a circulation down here somewhere over the high plains in the Central Plains. And that was how we were able to bring all that moisture up and around and make things so very wet across parts of Wyoming, eastern Montana, the Dakotas, Minnesota, into Manitoba, and the western part of Ontario. Well, take a look at what's changed. This is the newest data. You ready? Let's blow this up so we can see a little bit better. There we go. Here's that wave I just showed you in the wind vectors, and it's going to be coming onshore right there. So this is going to be a big event for the Pacific Northwest this weekend. But instead of cutting off, take a look at this. The wave stays open through Sunday night. This big ridge builds in the east, and there's going to be a lot of heat out ahead of this, a whole lot of heat out ahead of this. And as it comes through, now the wave stays open. In other words, it doesn't cut off and sit here and spin. It stays as an open wave and even takes on a bit of tilt to it, not much. That's going to keep the forward progression of this wave going. It's going to prevent it from sitting and spinning and stalling and producing all that heavy precip. And it's going to focus more of that over the eastern side of the wave rather than pulling it back around should it stay cut off in the west. And that's why if you get my morning reports, I was saying we got to watch this carefully once it gets over the mountains, and now we've got a better idea of what it's going to do. Now that takes us out to next Wednesday, and that trough pushes into the east, and that's going to bring in some cooler weather here. But take a look at what happens after that. Okay, see this wave right here? There seems to be a piece to the south and a second wave to the north. And from Wednesday into Thursday and Friday of next week, the models are attempting to cut that off. Do you notice it? And they're doing so by really taking fast winds up into British Columbia. And they're going to leave this little cutoff low in place here. Now what this does is this brings back in, once we get out here past about the 25th, a lot of warm weather back to the west. There will be a pretty substantial shot at cooler air coming into the northern plains, the Midwest, and into the east as this deeper trough, as you see here, becomes established. But we keep playing this forward, and this ridge rebuilds, which means we're going to go back over at the end of the month to a warmer pattern, especially if you're in the the western two-thirds of the country. And that little cutoff low there is interesting because it's showing up in both the European and in the GFS model. So that's probably the most important thing I've been watching update this week. And let's take it from there and show you what the latest all hazards weather map is. Now what we've got going on here in this region, this is all red flag warning. This is all about high winds. And we've got our first frost advisories out for parts of North Dakota. And we're going to talk about those temperatures in just a few moments here. But this shows you the changes that are coming first to the Pacific Northwest. So why don't we begin first with the system we're still dealing with today? Because you saw a few moments ago when I was detailing those surface winds, there is a front right in this area. And we're going to be watching for those storms to fire up on that front tonight. Plus we still have all the scattered storms that are going to be over parts of the southeast through the mid-Atlantic. To see that, we're going to go to our high-res NAM model, and we're going to start this off about 5 o'clock this evening and work our way through the evening hours. So along that front, we could have a frontal squall line that shows up right in through here that could bring in some brief gusty winds, possibly some isolated events of hail. But outside of that, we're going to watch this front kind of gather some strength overnight and produce a cluster of storms that could go right here between Iowa, this part of Nebraska, South Dakota, Minnesota. So in the early morning hours, that's all going to continue to push east from northern Wisconsin all the way down here through Omaha, down to almost the border of Kansas. And then that presses forward throughout the day on Friday. So here's the position of that front by Friday evening. Now again, a lot of scattered showers and storms here, and there is the beginning of this event we've been discussing. So going from Friday into the Friday overnight hours, and then eventually out here to Sunday morning, afternoon, and evening. Look, Nicholas still. Nicholas's circulation has barely moved. And now we're drawing up into this new wave that's forming over the Pacific Northwest. And that's what I really want to dig in and show you. So to do that, we're going to do our multi-model analysis because I'm quite impressed with the agreement between the 12Z GFS on the left and the 12Z European on the right. So take a look at this. Ready? We've already seen through Friday, getting in now to Saturday morning, afternoon, and evening. And let's just go on out here to Sunday morning, because that would be where the previous model runs kind of left off. Now you look at that, and I see really good agreement. The tropical system that was just off the Carolina coast today should be here in the GFS, and it's there in the European. There's scattered storms continuing in the southeast in both models. And you see the next big low cutting in here into the Pacific Northwest, and this again is Sunday morning. Well, playing this on forward through Sunday evening, now getting out here to Monday afternoon, both models are attempting to develop low pressure here. You can see that they are both drawing in quite a bit of moisture around this high. It's there in the GFS, and it's right here in the European. So the flow's coming around like this. We're pulling that moisture up, and it's getting wrapped around this low that's forming, right here in the northern plains. So as we go forward into Monday evening, then into the overnight hours, Tuesday morning, afternoon, and evening, these models are almost in lockstep with one another. They both got the position of the front by Tuesday evening here. Look at that. I mean, the European's just a little bit behind it, but not by much. And we're going to have to watch out to see how destabilized the air gets out ahead of this as to whether or not we'll have some severe storms that move through parts of the Mid-South, through the Eastern Corn Belt, up into the Great Lakes. And then as we play it forward, that low by Wednesday evening wraps up over the Hudson Bay. Both models do that. The front pulls through the northeast on Wednesday into Thursday. And then we get a drier go of it the end of next week. Both models agreeing on this. And then I'm really impressed because they both, if you take a look here, let's go back one step. They're both attempting to bring in that little cutoff feature. You can see a little bit of a reflection of it, somewhere in there. I don't know. It's amazing that they both got that same kind of feature going on. So I'm liking the fact these models are in agreement. So why don't we just go ahead and put them all together here? You've already seen this map, but let's look at it again. Next 7 days of total accumulated precipitation. Biggest change, the drier conditions in the Dakotas compared to the previous runs, the now wetter conditions in Minnesota and the Great Lakes, and the increase in precipitation here over the Eastern Corn Belt into the Northeast. That's the big change. From there, let's go look at the GFS, and you'll just notice I go back and forth. These two models really have this pattern down. There's differences. There's always differences. And remember, when you look at this particular map, this is where the GFS is wetter, and these colors represent where the European is wetter. And generally speaking, we see the European drawing more moisture into this one. But I still see some pretty solid agreement between the models here through the next 7 days or so. What about beyond that? They both actually agree on this as well. Continued troughing in Alaska, an open pattern in the in the North Pacific, a ridge in the Pacific Northwest in this broader trough that's coming through the Great Lakes. This is the end of that system that we just discussed. And that's how we end up getting this precipitation pattern for week 2, which was a pretty sizable adjustment over what we saw earlier in the week. Because this ridge now forms in this area, synoptically what happens is the flow comes around like this. You end up getting faster flow over the ridge, slower flow through the trough. There's a large area of upper level convergence here. That gives you subsidence in the atmosphere, and what that ends up lending to is just drier conditions overall. So we see this week from now until about next Wednesday looking one way, and then the following week drying out. And the next question becomes, what do the temperatures do at that point, and then what happens after that? And so let's get those questions answered. Temperatures first. We're going to look at these temperatures a couple different ways. I'm going to start off with max temperatures, and what we're going to notice is here's Thursday's highs. We've already realized these. Let's get into Friday. There's where the front comes through. So cooler in the northern plains, but warm out ahead of it. This is all cloud cover driven. Watch this though. As we go into Saturday and Sunday, look at the heat getting pulled into that low as it forms. So we could have some places here in the northern plains having about a 50 plus degree swing in temperatures in just a couple of days, all based upon the development of this next low. And as you get into Sunday, look at the Pacific Northwest into California. Very cool. Well, the pattern continues to move. There's Monday's highs, Tuesday's highs, out to Wednesday. So quite a bit of cooler air comes in behind that low. And you can see it here where we got our highs now somewhere in the 60s and 70s in the midsection of the country. But what I want to show you is the hour-by-hour highs and hour-by-hour temperatures from the NBM model. I've been kind of vetting the NBM now for a long time, and I think that we're starting to get a better blend. That the B in NBM stands for blend, and I want to show you this. Remember where we were concerned about that frost? Well, this is getting through today. And let's go now into tonight. Here we are, Friday morning at 4 a.m. Central Time. Let's stop it right there at 7 a.m. Central Time. Now, when I make these temperature maps, what I do is I put a hard contour at 32 degrees Fahrenheit. So we're going to have another frost event coming into parts of Saskatchewan out of Alberta, in and around Calgary, over here into central Saskatchewan. There's going to be a frost event more likely along the border here of Montana. This is almost right on time. And you can see here that these low temperatures are going to be somewhere in the 40s tomorrow morning, possibly in the high 30s. For this part of South Dakota, hence the reason for the frost advisory. Well, how far does that cold air make it? Well, you can see the position of the front on Friday. Look at that. But look at the heat in Texas. And let's just keep going with this. It's kind of fun. Let's now get into Saturday and watch the heat build. There it is on Sunday evening. Let's go Sunday afternoon. 90s really running up in the midsection of the country. But you know that next front swipes through. Here it is. Let's look at Monday into Tuesday. And the cooler air that's coming in behind this on Wednesday. In fact, I'm going to stop at 6 a.m. on Wednesday. There's a lot of colors here that are in the 40s. See that? So we got some cold air coming in behind this, and we're going to get, of course, cold enough here in the mountains to dip way below freezing. So I just want to kind of walk through and show you that, and then we'll go straight from here, which this is out about 6 days. Let's just look day 5 through day 10. And now we see the cooler air occupying the eastern half of the country while the ridge rebuilds. You can almost see it, can't you? There's the trough in Alaska, the ridge over the west, and the trough that's here. Okay. What about day 10 through 15? Same thing. The models seem to be hung up on that pattern. Ridges forming here, a broader trough over the east. Now this is where I really want to start our discussion into the long range. And we're going to start it by looking at this. I used the European model, looked down on the North Pole, and I said, what is the jet stream doing in the models as we just begin the month of October? And I want to compare it to normal. So let me highlight a few things. The winds come through here in the jet stream. And let's get this. Here we go. They come like this through the jet stream. They go really fast across this part of Asia, coming out of Russia. And then we have the North Pacific jet here, and it kind of dives into a trough there, builds into another ridge here. But look at the subtropical component of it there and there. Now, why I'm highlighting these things and making a big deal out of this is because this is what normal looks like for September and October. So if I averaged everything for September and October from 1980 to 2020, you got a stronger subtropical jet here. You got the fast winds coming off of Asia like we discussed, and the subtropical component coming in there as well. There's one distinct difference I want to point out, and that is the jet stream here seems to be weak and relatively far to the north and split away from the subtropical component. Can you see the divide? Now, if the models have this in them to finish September and start October, what I'll see when I look at this is that that's going to give us a drier forecast for October and a warmer forecast for October. And the models are going to attempt to continue this because to be honest, they can't often break away from the pattern they're initialized with. So this is some of the new data. That's now September 25th to October 25th. And what we see in general is a major shift over toward drier conditions here. Now, if we could make this happen for the folks that are in this part of the country who are harvesting, this would be a fantastic forecast moving forward. But I'm telling you, what it's actually doing here is it's taking the persistence of the pattern at the end of week 2 and not letting it go. That's what it's doing here. And you can imagine with the split in the jet stream that the temperature pattern is now much warmer. It is October though. Don't look at this map and assume that every day is going to be warm. You're going to have fronts, probably a front every 3, 4, 5 days. And so therefore the temperatures get knocked back, then they come back up. And you know how it goes. You know the drill across the U.S. in October. So the favoring here of the warmer than normal conditions is because the models have got the northern branch of the jet stream still in Canada and the subtropical branch here. And that's just allowing for more warmth. In fact, it's the reason why the jet stream is that far north, more warmth across the United States. So that's kind of got our new October outlook. What I want to finish with quickly here is I want to give you a quick update on what's going on with La Nina. So this La Nina that's developing in through here, again, we are not anticipating this being as strong as it was a year ago. Right now, the La Nina was developing strongly back in 2020. Not the case. We expect these central Pacific temperatures to be about minus 0.5 maybe as an average temperature, and there's still going to be quite a bit of warmth in the North Pacific to be discussing here. But I'm going to keep a very close eye on this as things progress forward, because we still see, take a look at this, we still see strong trade winds. See these blues in here? That means that in this area, which is on the map down here, we've still got quite a bit of strong trade wind activity. That's why the Southern Oscillation Index went back over to negative. But what I'm going to be looking at, and I hope you watch the other videos I produce, is what this means for the precipitation pattern in South America. Because in the near term, everything, as you can see here, is still very suppressed over South America. But there are questions as to whether or not, as we get out there, to begin October, do we start to favor a better situation for the monsoon? So I'm going to address that here in a few minutes when I produce the video for South America. And we'll leave it off at that point. I hope you all have a good rest of your day and week and weekend, and we'll talk to you again on Monday. Thanks.